Fire Emblem Three Houses is a video game. Like many video games, Fire Emblem Three Houses has 3 difficulty levels. In this case, normal, hard, and maddening. Because I'm such an incredible gamer and have a brain the size of a woolly rhinoceros, I thought I could handle maddening. This proved to be a mistake. Maddening mode lived up to its name, causing me to tear up my hair so hard that I accidentally took out a bit of my skull, and now some of my woolly rhino-sized brain has leaked out. This made one thing clear to me: my own intelligence clearly isn't enough to beat maddening. I would, therefore, have to seek inspiration from someone who is in fact intelligent. Three Houses is a game about war, so logically, I should be taking my inspiration from a historical general, one of the greats of all time. As we all know, Sun Tzu invented war, and then perfected it, so that no living man could best him in the Ring of Honor. But he had to write a whole book to contain all the strategies, and that sounds like a lot of reading. So how about instead I just get a bunch of dudes on horseback and start burning cities? Genghis Khan wasn't the first person to use the ride around shooting everything that isn't you strategy for world domination, but he was the best at it. Over a period of 20 or so years, his conquests took him from the Yellow Sea to the Caspian Sea, causing the deaths of somewhere between 4 and 60 million people. Let's call it 20 million. That would mean that good old Temujin killed someone every 31.5 seconds. Yeah, you try killing 2 people a minute for the next 20 years, you couldn't do it, your arm would get tired. I intend to harness the global climate affecting powers of murder that Genghis Khan had for my own benefit. The rules of the challenge are as follows: my units may only wield bows in combat. No other weapons, no unarmed combat, no magic. Also no items either, because you don't see any Mongol warriors with shields or healing potions, do you? They didn't need shields, they just rode away from all the ouchies. I am, however, allowed to use stat boosting items, because you can prove that the Mongols weren't all hyped up on enough rocky burdocks to fell an elephant. I'm also allowed to use battalions, provided they're on horses as well. In addition, my units are only allowed to certify for cavalry classes, starting at intermediate level because there aren't any cavalry classes below there. This does mean that I'm going to have to train them in using lances to get the certification requirements, but that's okay. I can train my units in whatever I like, just so long as they're not using anything other than a bow in combat. I will be playing on hard mode because I don't hate myself, and on classic because I ain't no coward. After witnessing the joys of friendship, I am greeted by a sleepy goblin. I give the protagonist the blessed name Temujin, the correct birthday, and make sure that Sothis knows my credit card details, just in case she recovers from her amnesia and turns out to be an exiled Nigerian princess. I am then awoken from my slumber by my father, Geralt, who wants us to ride to the next city we're going to despoil. Before we can leave, however, we are crudely cut off by 3 conveniently color-coded cretins. They are being pursued by cringe pedestrian melee bandits and want our help driving them off. Now, normally I would rob them myself and leave their bodies for the vultures, but I can't allow the reputation of our horde to be sullied by these glorified school bullies, so out we go. Immediately, we run into a problem. I had to eat my horse during the winter and accidentally use all my bowstrings as dental floss. In fact, the 5 characters present have 1 bow and 1 horse between them, and Geralt won't let me ride his horse in case I get hungry again. So for now, we're going to have to fight the way the plebs do. It sucks, but it's only a few guys with axes. How hard could it be? Ah. Okay, let's use what's left of my brain this time. I move Claude up and have him shoot. Edelgard goes to the left. Dimitri goes right in his face, takes Edelgard and Claude's stuff. Temujin goes to the right, takes Dimitri's stuff. Melee weapons and vulneraries go to the convoy. Shoot to kill. I have everyone advance and send Dimitri into the forest to tank, which he does. I shoot the bandit that hit him, Dimitri takes the bow and hands it off to Claude, who finishes him off. The other 2 bandits then attack me and Edelgard. Edelgard shoots one of the bandits, I take the bow and shoot the other, Claude takes the bow and finishes off the first bandit, Dimitri takes the bow and finishes off the second. Costas and Co see what's going on and decide to finally engage, and Geralt comes in as backup. Geralt lands the first attack on one of Costas' buddies, then Dimitri attacks the other, Claude uses curved shot to finish the one that Dimitri just attacked, and I finished off the one that Geralt attacked. Edelgard goes away, because she isn't needed anymore. On enemy fears, Costas attacks me, and then Geralt steps in to protect his son. Claude then takes the bow again and finishes off Costas. Easy clap. With the danger finally dealt with, we are greeted by the local hiding in bushes man, Alois, who as it turns out works for the Church of Seros as a knight. Having seen our incredible combat prowess, he wants us over at Garreg Monastery where he works. We arrive at Garreg and are greeted by Rhea, Archbishop of the Church of Seros. She and her advisor, Sedith, strong-arm Gerald back into the Knights of Seros and decide that I, complete stranger and silent protagonist that I am, would be a perfect professor at the Officers' Academy. The Academy has 3 houses, of which I will teach 1. Each house has its own students, with their own strengths, weaknesses, and designated personality traits. I am given the opportunity to talk to the students and better make an informed decision. After completely ignoring all of them, I decide to lead the Golden Deer. The Church intends to test our revolutionary new tactics in a mock battle against the students from the other 2 houses. Good news, we now have 3 bows between 5. The bad news is now the enemy have ranged units too, which means we can't just attack for free anymore. I take everything that isn't a bow and send it to the convoy, and then go out with Claude, Ignatz, Leonie, and Hilda accompanying me. We take out Ferdinand safely and land a hit on Ash. He retaliates and then we finish off him and Hubert. I've taken a lot of damage, as you can see, and because I don't have heals, I'm going to have to be careful. I have Claude and Ignatz curve shot Edelgard from outside our range, with Hilda standing next to them so they can benefit from her strength buff. Another curve shot and 2 regular shots later, and Edelgard goes down. Dorothea doesn't last much longer. Ignatz has the highest avoid, so he gets to be Manuela bait. On player phase, we have Ignatz curve shot her so that he's out of her retaliation range, and then Leonie finishes her off. We advance, as do the Blue Lions. I have everyone hang out just outside of the Blue Lions' range, except for Ignatz, who's on the heal tile. He gets attacked by Mercedes, and they exchange fire for a while. Meanwhile, the rest of us engage in the very important task of not going anywhere near Dimitri. Claude finishes off Mercedes, and I just hide because I'm on low health. Dimitri advances, and Dudu attacks Ignatz. On our next turn, we chip away at Dimitri and Dudu. Then Dimitri attacks Hilda, and Dudu takes out Ignatz. But don't worry, he didn't actually die. This is a mock battle, nobody's dying here. Claude and I avenge Ignatz on Dudu, and I finally reach level 2. Hilda finishes off Dimitri, and we advance on Hanneman. We use Leonie as bait, and then we shoot him to death. Sorry, not death, this is a mock battle. The Church of Seros has now tasked us with hunting down Costas and the remnants of his foot-slogging failures. While we track down Costas, we have a forced auxiliary battle, which exposes some of the limitations of our army. All of the enemy advance on us, which means we don't have room to maneuver. Our tactical options are more or less limited to shoot them or do something other than shoot them. We basically just hang out sort of half in the bushes and try and body block anybody who might die. Also, Lysithea got 2 kills. She is dealing 1 damage. 2 kills. Oh hey, we found Costas. Time to teach him what we do to bandits in my future empire. I use Claude as bait to lure him the initial trio and surround them, then open fire and presumably hit my own guys with the missed shots. I repeat the same tactic on the next group of enemies, then use Lysithea to lure in the ones to the left, because tanking that one singular hit is basically all she's good for. At this point, I can tell that it is our destiny to win, so I use Divine Pulse in reverse to skip ahead to our inevitable victory, and definitely didn't just lose the footage of the next half of the battle. Our next mission is to quell a rebellion, led by Lord Tomato. But before we do, I go on an auxiliary battle, to get some well-needed XP from our units, and to build support with Felix, who have asked to assist us this month. Things don't start very well as the enemies advance in waves towards us. Under normal circumstances, I'd just have the chunkier guys tank while we shoot at them from over the river, but if I can't heal, that doesn't work out very well. It also doesn't help that I forgot you can't access the inventories of characters on mission assistance, which means Felix doesn't have a bow and has been useless this whole time. Despite this, we do okay, at least until the last wave shows up. All of my units except myself and Leonie have taken hits and we can't just retreat out of range. I don't have enough firepower to take out all the bandits, so I have to resort to drastic measures. I place Marianne in range of the leftmost bandit and Lysithea on the central bridge. The plan is the enemy on the left will kill Marianne, one of the others, Lysithea, and the third will attack Hilda, who has enough health to take the hit. That way I only lose 2 units that weren't that useful anyway. However, my plans are foiled when Lysithea falls, as the other two instead charge over the bridge, taking out Raphael and Felix. Raphael's strong and he's tough, but he's no good with a bow, so he's probably going to be phased out anyway. But losing Felix is a huge blow. He's a great archer and has the major crest of Faldarius, using his already formidable damage to obscene levels. Clearly, I'm going to need to refine my tactics, and I'll need to refine them now because Tomato's forces have just ambushed us in the fog. I develop a groundbreaking new strategy called cower behind Catherine and let her do all the work. I then immediately forget about said plan and charge into the bushes. Cowering behind Catherine is a good idea, because as you can see, she is bisecting people left and right. Stevenson and Dickinson, her little buddies, not so much. Back to more important things, we found the mage that Tomato entrusted all the dry ice to. With him dead and all that fog gone, the mission changes from hide behind Catherine to steal as many kills from Catherine as possible. All goes well until we reach these three guys. The Armor Knight is a huge problem, as our bows deal little to no damage and Catherine has decided that she really likes this piece of woodland. I'm forced to retreat Hilda, Marianne and Ignaz to keep them safe, but ultimately the Armor Knight goes down in 2 turns. I make some tomato soup, and we all survived. After asking for assistance from somebody who can actually shoot, we go for another auxiliary battle. This one features many armor knights, so the usual tactic of shooting some arrows at them isn't going to work. With that in mind, I devised a new tactic of shooting more arrows at them. It works. We are then tasked with keeping an eye out for some conniving cardinals who want to send Rhea to the Shadow Realm. Instead, we decide to hang out in the Holy Tomb and see if we can make Ignaz think that the corpses of the saints have come back to life or something. We are rudely interrupted, however, by some goons from the Western Church who apparently have their own business with the corpses of the saints. We employ mini-bows against the central archer and curve shots against the mage so as to avoid counterattacks. Next up between us and the objective is the Death Knight. I bravely advance the army around him and engage the Western troops, using the narrow passages between the tombs to my advantage. Because the Death Knight won't attack us if we don't attack first or enter his range, we don't do either of those things and sweep around him. At this point I could order an attack on the commander and end the map, but more XP. Once I've slaughtered everyone, except the Death Knight, I finally turn our bows on the commander. With several arrows sticking out of him, he uses the last of his strength to open the Tomb of Seros, finding only an odd-looking sword. After delivering the coup de grace with the bow and definitely not the aforementioned sword, I hang it up on my wall and leave it there for the rest of the game. The game now tasks me with killing my opposite. While I am not using the powerful sword that I'm expected to, Mictlan is using the powerful lance that he isn't supposed to. Also, I have big news. Claude has promoted to Cavalier. It is finally time to horse. We advance, accompanied by Gilbert, and its dad, Knight of Seros, and Walking Liability. Normally, he would let him get killed by the reinforcements, so he isn't drawing aggro on the whole map by walking within archer range. I, however, killed the first few enemies too quickly, and Gilbert continues to move forward. Claude demonstrates the importance of horse by outrunning the reinforcements while shooting back at them, managing to kill 2 of them before they catch up to the rest of our army. We continue, repel ambush reinforcements, Gilbert aggroes the whole map, he gets oofed, we avenge him, the usual. Mictlan, crest or no crest, can deal a lot of damage with the Lance of Ruin. Unfortunately for him, the Lance of Ruin is a lance. With Mictlan defeated, we can reclaim the lance of turning people into giant monsters. What the heck is going on here? Alright people, I want all bows trained on that. Ooh, a chest avenue. Okay, I'll leave the mean couple to fend off the Black Beast, while the rest of us fight through the remaining enemies. Claude and Hilda aren't that happy about having to fight a spawn of the Netherworld on their own, but they manage well enough while we grab another useless item. Uh-oh, Flame's gone missing. Who knows what sort of danger she might be in? It is of the utmost importance that we find and rescue her at once. But that ends the month's activities early. You know, she looks pretty tough to me, I'm sure she'll be fine. During this month's exploration, I find enough evidence to show that Yuritsa likely kidnapped her. We could, at a time of our choosing, investigate his room and probably save her. I keep this information to myself because it benefits me to do so. Eventually though, Ignaz, the annoyingly decent person that he is, calls us to Yuritsa's quarters after hearing a scream from there. We discover, in this order, Manuela, who has been dying of a stab wound on the floor for a month, a secret passageway in the wall, Hanneman, who press gangs Claude into helping him carry Manuela away, Flane and some randomer, who have also been lying unconscious on the floor for who knows how long, and the Death Knight, who is, unfortunately, very much alive. This battle, we have a choice. We can either defeat the Death Knight, or everyone except the Death Knight, either way within 25 turns. I opt to not engage the terrifying super unit who can kill anyone who likes a one-rounded combat and against whom I have no prepared countermeasures. I designate the least likely couple in Fódlan to take the eastern corridors, while using myself as live bait for the western troops. By repeating the usual tactic of get the tough guy to draw them in and then unleash a hail of arrows, we make good progress. With half the army now on horseback, we can add a new tactic, ride up, shoot and retreat to where they can't reach you, to our repertoire. With this variant technique where you somehow shoot through a wall. There's also shoot at them while retreating, which is handy for when the enemies don't go down so easily. These tactics prove sufficient for this mission, and, with the addition of gambits, all subsequent missions. With only the Death Knight remaining, he is ordered to go away by some goon calling themselves the Flame Emperor. No. I'm the Emperor, not you. This month we get to take a break from war with the Battle of the Eagle and Lion. It's like the three-way Mach battle we had at the start of the year, but on a bigger scale and with more prestige for winning. This makes it the perfect time to start poaching students from the other houses. So I recruit Ingrid, discover that Caspar's Beast Fort is still time-locked, make some headway towards getting Annette, then get bored and decide to just have the battle. As an aside, something strange happened here. I had asked Annette for mission assistance this month, which means she should be on my side during the battle, but it wouldn't make sense for her to be going against her own house during the Battle of the Eagle and Lion. As it turns out, the game resolves this problem by not letting us have her, or the Blue Lines. She just gets replaced with a generic Kingdom General. That's a bit weird. My goal in this battle is to defeat as many of the other houses' units as I can, so I devised a strategy of charging down to the central hill, so that we could strike at all parts of the battlefield and have Marianne use Ballista, which is legal because it's just a big bow. The central enemies don't phase us, and we can avoid the ones at the sides. Dimitri, seeing us do this, advances his forces along the south path towards Edelgard. I split our forces to hit him from both sides while the Black Eagles and Blue Lines battle. Petra's high avoid makes her a scary opponent, not gonna lie, but even she can dodge a well-placed barrel of gunpowder. Edelgard herself shows up and splits Lorenz in two with an axe, but because this is a mock battle, he legally cannot die of his wounds. Neither can Edelgard or Dimitri, which is fortunate for them. Our next mission is to head back to the tutorial village to investigate some strange goings-on there. Turns out, the strange goings-on were the villagers hosting a Dimitri cosplay competition and getting a bit too into character. Random villagers with swords might be able to kill every last one of the unarmed peasants, but they don't fare nearly as well against us. We blitz through them to discover Tomas, the monastery's librarian. Oh wait, never mind, he's actually Solon, chief mad scientist of the lovely chaps. And the Death Knight's here, hooray! Solon uses his ultimate scientific power of making the recording fail again. Like all mad scientists though, Solon doesn't know the importance of getting reproducible results, so yeah, eat arrows, mate. Solon spouts some cryptic nonsense and leaves, while Claude goes to look for survivors. Then the Flame Emperor arrives and asks me to join them, saying that with the power of the Sword of the Creator, the lovely chaps won't be a threat. I reply that, while they can have the sword for all I care, there's only one Emperor around these parts. They don't take that well, and leave without even taking the sword with them. This month, our mission is to keep watch over an unused chapel, as people have been seen sneaking in, and we need to make sure that they aren't, I don't know, building Mecha Godzilla in there. Also, it turns out that the sleepy goblin living rent-free in my head is actually the goddess of Fódlan, which in retrospect should not be surprising, given the time shenanigans and her calling herself the Beginning. More importantly, the White Heron Cup is this month, and I need to pick a dancer. Because I forgot about the +5 charm for dance lessons, I assumed that it didn't matter in this one, given I can't use a dancer, and picked Caspar because I thought it'd be funny. He didn't win. Now's as good a time as any to bring up paralogs. As you can see, an ocean view forces me to deploy Wyvern Rider Sethith, armed only with lances, sporting a march ring, and with the Ceros Pegasus Co. with him. This is all blatantly illegal, but because I can't do anything about that with him unrecruited and I want to do the paralog, I'm just gonna keep him out of combat and call it legal. Oh yeah, and it turns out they weren't building Mechagodzilla in that chapel. Instead we get some run-of-the-mill demonic beasts. They're tough, but luckily Geralt is built different, and he, Ignaz, Shamir, Claude and I have had it up to here with the big blasty boys. Unfortunately, Monica has clearly added up to here with Geralt, and not even the combined power of Divine Pulse and Rally Speed are enough to save him. After a month of taking out my grief on anyone who looks at me funny, we find out where Geralt's killers are hiding. Luckily they forgot rule number 1 of fighting cavalry: you can't run from a horse. Monica reveals what we all knew all along. namely that she is an absolute clown. Despite the best efforts of the usual gamut of brigands, mages, demonic beasts, and one very brave guy on a horse, I'm able to catch up to her. You probably expected me to shoot her at this point, but I instead choose to commit a war crime. My horse bolted at the sight of the explosion, so I am forced to pursue her on foot. Solon appears and really earns the name Lovely Chaps by committing a couple more crimes of his own. Claude doesn't really seem to mind that I've been sent to this shadow realm. I'm gonna have to talk to him about that later. Only Sothis has the power to escape this realm, but she can't exactly do anything on her own. So she merges with me, sending me into Big Bad Byleth mode. After a brief rampage through reinforcements, I send the least threatening of my units to defeat Solon. Claude's kinda mad that I just entered Big Bad Byleth mode without telling him how, so I tell him how. Somehow, he believes me. The shock of Claude actually trusting someone causes me to pass out. When I wake up, Rhea is being weird. I decide for the sake of my sanity to just assume that I had a divine fever dream and move on. When I wake up properly later, Rhea isn't being quite as weird. She's now taken me to the Holy Two, a very important sounding place that only she and Sedith seem to know exists for some vaguely defined revelation. Upon arriving there, I discover A, it's heckin' massive, and B, Sothis' gamer chair's there. Upon sitting on the throne, I receive a revelation, explaining the true nature of all things. Something tells me that Rhea is not going to be happy to find out that the answer to life, the universe, and everything is 42, so I play dumb and pretend nothing happened. I don't have to for long though, because the Flame Emperor and some Imperial soldiers have arrived to crash the party. They want to steal the crest stones, we want them not to steal the crest stones. The demonic beasts and armor knights are becoming a real pain at this point, and those monsters are the first serious threat we've faced in a while. It's a good thing I allowed gambits in this challenge. For this reason, step 1 of the enemy's plan, steal everything that isn't nailed down, goes quite well. It's step 2, hightail it out the door, that they didn't think through. After riding them all down and defeating Metroid, who really is not worthy of being a named character, we trap the armoured 5-movement having Flame Emperor in a pincer. Inconveniently, I'm the only unit in range with all my blood still in me, and I can't finish the Flame Emperor on my own. Were it not for heavy draw Silverbow Shamir, Ingrid would have been cleaved in two. Shamir's arrow hits the Flame Emperor right across the face, knocking off the mask to reveal Edelgard, to the surprise of no one because this game released years ago. She storms out with Hubert. Meanwhile, Claude seems to be more concerned with Rhea's secrets than all of this nonsense has just been unfolding. Meanwhile, Edelgard has just claimed the throne of the Adressian Empire for herself and is massing an army to make the Church of Seros touch grass. We can't have that. We need all the grass for our horde. Besides, I said there's only one emperor in these parts and it sure ain't Poopy Head von Hresvelg. With half the armies of Fódlan now bearing down on top of us, Rhea decides to keep being weird, naming me as her successor right in front of the far better qualified Sedith. Even he's had enough for now. I finally build support with Dorothea to recruit her, and Sylvain, whom I've been at B support with for months at this point, decides to join me at the last minute. Clever choice, Sylvain. Clever choice. Edelgard arrives with her army, which is sporting rather more Pegasus Knights and flying monsters than would be wise. My eastern flank gets bogged down with armoured units and the Death Knight, but the western and central troops, aka the good ones, proceed without too much trouble. One allied healer really proved their worth by healing Hilda for 1 HP, and then advancing on the Death Knight and 2 armoured knights on their own. We defeat Hubert, which Edelgard takes personally, and marches west to meet us, forcing us to retreat. Meanwhile, the Death Knight and his posse menace Rhea. Claude sallies forth to engage the false Emperor and manages to escape unharmed. I had hoped to drag out the battle a little in the hopes of getting a 1v1 between Rhea and the Death Knight, but Edelgard managed to corner Claude and Shamir, so I was forced to take her out. Unfortunately, Edelgard's army is tens of thousands strong, which is tens of thousands more than I have. I know all is lost when both Claude and I run out of arrows and are forced to resort to swords. Rhea, seeing the need for range support, transforms into a massive dragon and just raises the entire town pretty much. Her saving us leads to her getting dogpiled by demonic beasts, so then I have to save her, which means my enemies get to exploit my lack of range and the goober from earlier blasts me off the edge of a cliff. Well, so much for that.
Hey, are you awake? It's the ethereal moon of the year 1185. It's been nearly 5 years since the monastery fell. Hey, slow down, will ya? Where do you think you're going? Are you crazy?
Yes. Upon my return to Garreg, I see that a lot has changed.
The place is in ruins, and it's been overrun by bandits. But most incredibly of all, Claude has a beard. Okay, let's go deal with those bandits. Okay, two big problems right off the bat. First of all, Claude's clearly forgotten everything I taught him and has mounted a wyvern, which means I can't use him, which means I'm on my own. Secondly, the game expects you to heal yourself using the many concoctions dropped by the enemies, but I can't do that either. In fact, my only healing option, as it has been this whole time, is hoping for the Crest of Flames to proc. But of course, why have reliable methods of healing when you could just hope for it to happen randomly? I hold out well for 2 turns, at which point Lawrence, Ignatz, Hilda, and Leonie arrive. Because they've kept their horses and were clearly paying attention in class, we can go hunting like in the old days. Not long later, Marianne arrives as well, but because I've long since taken her off the active roster and given her bows to somebody else, she can play Tiddlywinks with Claude for all I can. It turns out our main problem in this battle isn't healing, it's damage. In the last battle, we struggled against the Fortress Knights, but now every enemy we face takes some pincushioning to kill, and the Thieves and Assassins are difficult to even hit. Palardo gets dangerously close to escaping before we're able to finish him off. After the battle, the Golden Deer reunite, and resolve to face down Edelgard. Also, it turns out that Claude's become the leader of the Lesser Alliance, which is a bit of a spanner in the works for my own plans for domination of Fódlan, but that's a problem for later. Also, the church faculty are here looking for Rhea, but nobody cares about them. While we make ourselves at home once again in Garreg, the Imperial General Randolph hears that we're there. He thinks, well, storming the castle worked the first time, surely it'll work again, but without the endless swarms of infantry that overwhelmed them the last time. Absolute tactical genius there. The enemy's plan, once again, is to overwhelm us with numbers. We can't let them into Garreg again, so hit and run tactics aren't really an option. Luckily, Claude had an idea of luring them in and then attacking with fire, but to do that, we'll need to escort this Swordmaster to that square. The eastern flank progresses with little resistance, but it's quite the slog breaking through their centre. With no room to maneuver and being unable to retreat, we're basically forced into a straight punching match with the enemy, which is exactly the opposite of what we want. Our problems are further compounded by our relative lack of gambits, because I've only just remembered to train people in authority. Despite how difficult the fighting is, we actually make it through Randolph's army before the allied Swordmaster can launch a fire attack. Randolph, desperate to avoid a humiliating total defeat, charges me. The allied Swordmaster reaches the spot and torches the town of Garreg for absolutely no reason while I kill Randolph. Claude, having seen the endless swarms we're up against, asks for help from Judith, a powerful noblewoman that he knows well. She agrees to provide reinforcements and decides that to avoid suspicion, we should meet up in the Valley of Torment. It's at this point that I hear from Ferdinand about an interesting ritual practice in Fódlan, where a smith repeatedly whacks a weapon with a hammer, heats it in a fire, dunks it in water and such, and they believe it makes the weapon stronger. I also discovered that forging weapons fixes them for free, so I decided to just do that whenever they break. As I arrive at the meeting point, I am warmly greeted by the inhospitable temperatures, and coldly greeted by an enemy army, led by a knight named Gwendol. The patches of partially molten rock make maneuvering difficult, and enemy archers can pick us off as we go. However, the biggest shock comes in the form of a betrayal from our resident mediocre archer, Ash, who is among Gwendol's forces. With all the training I've given him, Ash is a dangerous foe. Just kidding, I one-shot him. Good news though, through my mystical protagonist powers, I am able to re-recruit Ash into the Horde. Even better, my decision to charge across the rock without a care in the world pays off, as I am reminded that the Paladin class has the Terrain Resistance ability, nullifying all terrain damage. With all the difficulty of the map gone, we go on a rampage, easily routing some reinforcements that presumably snuck themselves and their horses across the red-hot lava to the battlefield. Judith then arrives, conveniently giving me another essential unit to defend, right as Gwendol starts advancing that way. As I fight my way towards them, they do battle. Gwendol comes out better. Judith manages to dodge an archer and the armor knight as she attacked, and thus lives a turn longer. We ride to our rescue, and thanks to a break shot from Leonie, Ignatz and Cyril can poke enough holes in his defenses to end them. Judith announces that she will be joining us personally, whether Claude likes it or not, even though we can't use her in battle anyway. She's asked Claude's retainer, Nardell, behind his back to look over both of their territories. Claude then resolves to sneak through Gloucester territory to take the Great Bridge of Murden, so that the Adressian Empire won't be able to get troops into Leicester and the Leicester lords will no longer be threatened into helping Edelgard. He will do so by sending Nardell at the head of the House Regan and Daphnel forces to strike at Gloucester's northern lands to distract them. It is also only at this point in the run that I realise I have a healing method other than hoping for crests to proc. Dorothea's personal skill, Songstress, causes allies who start their turn next to her to heal 10% of their HP. If I brought her into battle, I could have just had the wounded units fall back and listen to her sing until they're ready to go back in. Oh well. Anyway, the bridge. We storm the eastern half, dispatching Acheron and his goons along the way. I then volunteer Claude to act as bait for Ladislava. Luckily, she's only strong enough to cleave him nearly in half, and we give her the traditional greeting. After hesitating on whether to advance on the remaining troops, I come up with a plan of spamming gambits until the bad guys are thoroughly trampled. With the bridge taken, Claude dispatches half the army to spread the word and raise an even bigger army, which is conveniently finished before the next mission. We have now made it into Adressian territory, but we're not the only ones here. A vast army has been spotted gathering at a fort to the south, possibly led by Edelgard herself. As if that weren't enough, an unidentified force has somehow made it through the entirety of Leicester without being noticed, and is likely headed the same way we are. I haven't been using bow knights up until this point, on account of their lower stat growth, but I finally break them out from Mercedes and Caspar's Paralog, and let me tell you, bow range +2 is one heck of a drug. Really shouldn't have been as worried about that Paralog as I was. Thick fog blankets the ground as we march on Gronder Field, which we're hoping will have enough grass for all our horses. Sure enough, Edelgard herself has finally graced us with her presence on the battlefield. And sure enough, the other army's here. It's the last of the Fargus forces, led by Dimitri. He says the thing, and all three sides recklessly charge in without any thought of tactics. Everyone has their own agenda in this battle. Edelgard wants to confuse us and Dimitri into fighting each other. Dimitri wants Edelgard's head on his lance and will fight through anything between him and her. And me? I want to slaughter everyone for XP. Remember, I'm the good guy. Initially, I charged down the centre, taking out the Fortress Knights with the aid of 5-range having Magic Bow plus Bow Knight Lawrence. Edelgard sends her own piddly little cavalry force to attack us, and Dimitri gets distracted by some weeds on the ground. I dispatch a force to deal with the cavalry, Claude takes out the ballistic guy, and Hubert trash talks my tactics. On enemy phase, neither side does much of anything. Shamir forces Hubert to retreat, and we push towards Edelgard. She sends the troops that were on the front line against the Fargus army to slow our advance, which is Dimitri's cue to advance and call in an ambush where we used to be. Now I break out the gambits on the monsters and assassin they've thrown at me. Fargus cavalry approach the fighting, which doesn't bode well for my new bonus objective I just made up of not letting anybody else get a single kill. I make the mistake of moving Hilda onto the central hill, which Edelgard lights on fire. After Leonie takes her turn, despite it being completely pointless because Hilda's a paladin with terrain resistance. But at least she didn't burn her own troops, making this the most intelligent hill burning in the history of Three Houses. Also, Dimitri seems to be a bit lost. Also, Claude just got impaled. No matter, I have Divine Pulse, I can try again. This time, Edelgard lights up the hill before Hilda or Leonie move. I mean, there is a Fargus soldier there, so it did something, I guess. Pressed between the Fargus hammer and the Adressian anvil, I focus on clearing out the immediate threats. Edelgard does nothing, as our army consists of one disoriented demonic beast by this point, and Dimitri actively sends his troops onto the burning hill. I move to the south of the map to halt the advancing army, which includes Felix, whom I distinctly remember getting shanked in Chapter 3. Since rising from the grave, he's put a lot of effort into making himself shank-proof, and takes little damage from even my strongest warriors. It takes the combined efforts of me, Claude, Hilda, and Leonie to put him back in the dirt. Dedu actually is shank-proof, and Lawrence's magic bow broke, so I whip out the old gambits on his allies and have the tougher of my units block his path. Then Claude quits him, rendering all that planning a waste of time. Dimitri's troops refuse to leave the hill that is actively on fire. They can't reach anyone from there, none of them can use the ballista. I guess Dimitri just wanted to see them in the eternal flames. I send Claude in to live through Dimitri's dream of a duel with Edelgard, and he wins in spectacular fashion. With the sole reason for his even being here gone, Dimitri continues like nothing ever happened. Leonie and Cyril point him in the right direction. The battle is won, the Adressian and Fargus forces never once saw combat with each other, and all my credibility in claiming that this is meant to be a challenge run is gone. Afterwards, Hilda brings news that Dimitri died to some random mooks. From someone who hasn't interacted with them once, from what I can tell, she's pretty banged up about it, and Dedu swears to continue Dimitri's pointless revenge quest. Fort Mercia stands between us and the Adressian capital, and it's quite the tough nut. Claude wasn't able to secure the necessary reinforcements to take it in an assault, but Hilda has an idea. We simply violate the protocol additional to the Geneva Conventions of the 12th of August 1949 and relating to the protection of victims of international armed conflict, Protocol 1 of the 8th of June 1997, Part 3, Methods and Means of Warfare, Combatants and Prisoner of War Status, Section 1, Article 39(2), which states, "It is prohibited to make use of the flags or military emblems, insignia or uniforms of adverse parties while engaging in attacks or in order to shield, favour, protect or impede military operations." I'm pretty sure get them to open the door so our army can get in qualifies as favouring a military operation. Claude sent a letter to the garrison and had Ignatz deliver it because he thought they would trust someone with his baby face. He also summoned an allied army to pretend to attack us on the way in so that the garrison would panic. The Death Knight saw through our ruse immediately, but it doesn't matter because we're already in. Also in is Nardel, or should I say, Nadir the Undefeated, renowned general of Almyra. Claude and Nadir fight with bow and sword in the cutscene, despite Claude not using swords and Nadir not using either. I send the bulk of my forces north to meet up with Claude and Nadir, putting me a lot closer to the Death Knight's escape path when he decides to hightail it out of there. This does put a wrench in my plans to get him to fight Nadir and see who wins, but Nadir went the wrong way anyway, so it doesn't matter. We move to intercept him, and I decide to go into combat with him myself because it'd be funny if I got the 31% crit and won. I did. We pursue the Death Knight out of the fortress, just in time for 2 ballistic missiles to... Wait, hang on, ballistic missiles? No, that can't be right. When was that invented? The 13th century, and they were actually decently powerful. I guess that part was only mostly anachronistic. Next, we march on the Adressian capital, Enbar, and do so sneakily because of our numerical disadvantage. Edelgard deliberately didn't evacuate the city, thinking we would have qualms about all the civilian casualties, thus proving that she wasn't paying attention at the start of the video. Our forces entered the city from 2 different areas, so we're divided into 2 groups. I'm calling them Squad Alpha Murder People, and Squad Ash and his babysitters because Ash died on turn 1. Alpha Murder People is immediately faced with the problem of killing the Death Knight without the luxury of him being alone. Ash and his babysitters, meanwhile, are faced with the problem of killing whoever they can without entering siege weapon range. Alpha Murder People go around the Death Knight in order to take down the artillery and surround him, and Ash and his babysitters advance. Reinforcements appear up north and kill Ingrid. After Divine Pulse, we stay out of their way, and on the next turn rattle 2 of the Falcon Knights, kill the other, and damage the monster. We deal with the remaining artillery, and Ash and his babysitters advance west. We finish off the reinforcements just in time for more of them to arrive down south. I bravely volunteer to lure the Death Knight off his stronghold, and the Gambit spam commences. Cyril finishes him off for good with point-blank volley. With our army united, we press on. Hubert has great range thanks to bolting, but nevertheless proves weaker than the Death Knight. As we prepare to enter the palace, Dedu shows up, gives us some intel, and probably leaves to go chop Edelgard's head off. Claude then says that we need a powerful ruler to ensure peace, and then has the gall to be shocked when I tell him that I've been saying that the whole time. We enter the palace and immediately win some sort of victory, because even if we all fall here, Edelgard's going to have to step over the horse manure on our way out. We clear out the immediate danger, then advance on the western enemies. The southern enemies approach us, and Dedu appears in the northeast. Originally, I was planning on more or less routing the enemy for XP, but I've now decided A, I can't be bothered, and B, I want Dedu to survive. So I have Ingrid unlock the northwestern door so we can storm the throne room. Weapons bounce off Dedu like hyperactive children in the McDonald's drive-thru, but spells are a different story. We preemptively deal with the mages and distract the giant demonic beast. Even with Claude, public enemy number 2, right there, most of the enemies still pointlessly tilt at Dedu, public enemy number 20-something probably. Having failed to cause Death Knight vs Rhea and Death Knight vs Nadir to happen, I finally get the chance to ensure Dedu vs Edelgard. We clear his path, and he goes for it. I position my units into a tunnel of honour for Dedu. He then goes off to fight some soldiers from the rest of the map that are advancing on us. I have Ignatz physically block his path, not that it stops him. I am forced to Divine Pulse and remember to block the stairways to prevent the reinforcements from spawning. after dealing with all the nearby enemies, it becomes obvious that Dedu is also planning on routing the enemy. At this point I get fed up and order Leone and Hilda to kill. Edelgard reveals her deep emotional connection to Byleth in a scene that only really makes sense on the Silver Snow route, so I decide to help her reincarnate there. Hubert from Beyond the Grave tasks us with destroying the lovely chaps, who have been assisting the Adrestians, and directs us to their base. Also Ray is here, and Claude's had enough of her secret keeping and demands that she immediately begin exposition. It's a good thing I chose Genghis Khan over Sun Tzu at the start of the video, because Ray has just told us that, far from the whole win without fighting bit that he's known for, Sun Tzu was in fact a bandit leader who brought war and slaughtered the children of the goddess, whoever they are. I haven't been talking about paralogs or other side battles because we'd be here all day if I did, but on Marianne's paralog I broke 2 monster shields with 1 gambit and I want you to know about that. Anyway, Shambhala. We secure the perimeter and pick off whoever we can from the safety of the outer wall. When we do enter Shambhala proper, top priority is defeating the generals responsible for spawning Titanus reinforcements and banning the Viscam. So Cyril defeats Pittacus, thus deactivating the Viscam, and Petra and Ingrid gang up on Bias, preventing further Titanus from ruining our day. We then converge on the central command and take down Talas before we knew what hit him. He tries the whole ballistic missile thing again, prompting Rhea to try the whole turning into a dragon thing again. Result, Shambhala razed, Tala is dead, Rhea somehow still alive. But hey, we won, and we'll secure, hooray! Rhea is dying of the wounds she sustained in the last battle, so obviously this is the perfect time to interrogate her about the true history of Fódlan. TLDR, Sothis comes to Fódlan, gives the people their technology, they fight, Sothis wins, then falls asleep, then someone kills her in her sleep and also kills her children and makes the heroes' relics out of their bones, and then Seros/Rhea kills them all. Meanwhile, in the present, an unidentified army has been marching at us from the east, indiscriminately razing cities and wiping the floor with the strongest armies in Fódlan. This can only mean one thing. With the level of tactics and strategy they're employing, they must be led by Sun Tzu himself. This presents an obvious and insurmountable problem if you remember the whole no man can best him in the Ring of Honor thing. It's just a shame I don't intend to fight with honor. Alright, what do we have here? In the red corner, weighing in at a total of probably a lot of pounds, we have Sun Tzu and his posse of goons. In the blue corner, weighing in at still a lot but not quite as many pounds, we have us, all Bone Knights geared for maximum ability and offense, and with no more reason to conserve weapon durability. And they've covered up our one weakness by putting heal tiles everywhere, so I'm feeling confident. We begin by charging down the north and south flanks, outrunning and outranging all who pursue us. We're doing this for 2 reasons: to avoid the poisonous and hard to traverse swamp, and to kill 2 people, Lamine, who created the swamp, and Odess, who summons flying demonic beasts. Meeting little resistance, I personally save our brave warriors from the horrors of Trenchfoot, and Leone and Ignat snipe Odess. I move the troops to the centre, where they are harried by siege weapons that do comparatively little damage, so we can use the heal tiles that they put there and be good as new. With no more consequences for anything we do, we mop up the remains of the dwindling, incompetent mob that Sun Tzu calls an army. With the fall of Gautier, his shield disappears, and now we merely do very little damage to him, instead of none. Gambit spam, the go-to method of disposing of annoying bosses, ain't gonna work on him, he's just too tough. Luckily, I have a cunning plan. I start by sending everyone who isn't on full health to a heal tile for all the good that'll do. Then we cluster everyone just to the south of him. Next, I get Claude to use Fallen Star on him, so that he can survive the next combat and lure him off his stronghold time, while getting everyone else the heck out of his way. Now we commence Phase 2. Running away, screaming in terror while anyone who can take a hit takes party and shots at the demented serial killer chasing us down. Hilda gambits him and then tanks his hit on enemy phase. With no units left that can survive an attack, we go back to gambits. He only had 28 health left at this point. And Leone, the most natural bow knight in the game, and thus by one metric the most Mongolian of them all, is the one to fire the final shot. With our victory over Sun Tzu, the last credible threat to my reign has been vanquished, and the Pax Mongolica can begin. The empire that I have established shall last for all time, or until my descendants squabble over inheritance and divide the empire up into smaller weaker canyons, whichever comes first. There are a couple of final matters to attend to. Firstly, I need to make sure that Claude doesn't get in the way, because he has a pretty good claim to the throne at this point. Luckily, he's caught wind of my plotting, and wisely chose to return to Elmira and become its ruler. The Elmirans were going to be next up for conquest, but I guess I can leave them for now. Also on the agenda, my descendants can't be the ruin of the empire if I don't have any descendants, so I'm going to need to get married. Remember a minute ago when I said that Leone is by one metric the most Mongolian of my troops? Yeah, I supported Leone. Yeah, that's it. And with that, I have proved that it is indeed possible to beat Fire Emblem 3 Houses using only horse archers. Unit diversity and combined arms tactics are officially for nerds. I guess I need to decide where I'm going to go for my next conquest then. I know. How about I conquer YouTube? Yeah, that's right. This video is also part of my plan for world domination. You watch it, that means you're a part of my empire, and that means you have to like, comment, and subscribe. What, you think you're not going to? You've seen what happens to my enemies, you've seen what I can do to them. Leone knows where you live. Get on it now.